All right, today we are going to factor using the bottoms up method. So we are going to be factoring trinomials that have a lead coefficient other than 1. When we had a 1, it made it easy because we just had to look for those two numbers that multiplied together and added together. As always in this class, we're going to talk through the steps. However, it makes a little more sense when we are actually doing the steps. So we'll talk through them, but it'll be better when we see them worked out. So step 1, multiply A by C. So remember, in standard form, it's ax squared plus bx plus c. So A and C are the numbers in the very front and the very back. Multiply them together. List the factors of that product. So whatever number we got on number 1, we go to number 2. We list the factors. We've done that before. You have factor sheets to help you with that. Determine which has a sum equal to B. So that step should kind of feel familiar, right? We list out factors, see which one adds up to B. Then we're going to write the factors in the parentheses. Again, number 3 should look familiar to what we've done before. X plus a number, X plus a number. Of course, our signs might not always be plus, right? Sometimes our signs will change to a minus. Step 4 and 5 is where this gets a little different. Divide each number, so those numbers we filled in the back of the parentheses, we will divide by the A value from our original problem. Then simplify if we can. So sometimes it'll divide evenly. We can simplify to a whole number. Sometimes we'll just be able to reduce the fraction. Move any bottoms up. That's why this is called the bottoms up method. So any denominators that we have left after step 4, that number in the denominator comes up out in front of the X. I know it sounds strange. It's a little weird. Hopefully after we practice it some, we'll at least get the hang of it and it might make a little more sense. So that's the one we're going to focus on first. 2x squared plus 13x minus 24. If it helps, you can list your A, B, and C out off to the side. But our first step was to multiply A times C. So 2 times negative 24 is going to give me what? Negative 48. So if we take A times C, we get negative 48. Now we're looking for the factors of negative 48 that add up to a positive 13. So we know if we're multiplying to a negative that our numbers will have to be negative and positive. So one sign of each. So we can get out that handy dandy factor sheet I gave you before your quiz. Oh, bummer. Or we can just start listing them out. 1 and 48. 2 and 24. What else? 6 and 8. Oh, what was that, Charles? 3 and 16. I think there's one we're missing. 4 and 12. And we know one of these numbers would have to be positive and one would have to be negative. So we could use the pair of 3 and 16. Which one needs to be negative? Good. Negative 3 and a positive 16. Are we all okay with how we figured out which pair we want? Who said no? Ian said no. What is wrong with our pair?
How you know which one's negative and which one should be?
So our bigger number gets the sign that's in the middle. So our sign in the middle was plus, our bigger number 16. We can always double check because if we take positive 16 and add a negative 3, that gives us a positive 13. Okay, so if you're not sure, you can just try it one way. If it doesn't work, try it the other way. If it still doesn't work, then you probably have the wrong pair. All right, our next step is to write the factors in the parentheses like we would have done last week. So in one set, I'll have x minus 3. The other, I'll have x plus 16. Our next step is a new step. Step number 4. What did it say to do? Good. Divide each of these numbers by the a value. What's our a value? 2. So I'm going to divide by 2. Divide by 2. We're going to simplify if we can. Will 3 over 2 simplify? No. So for now, just leave it as x minus 3 over 2. Will the other one simplify? What does it become? 8. So we have x plus 8. Step 5 is bottoms up. So on this first factor, since I still have a denominator, that 2 is going to come out and sit right in front of the x. It's still going to be inside the parentheses, but this becomes 2x minus 3. On the other factor, there was no longer a bottom, right? There's nothing under it, so it just stays x plus 8. If you are ever unsure of yourself, once you get to the very end here, you can multiply this back out, doing the double distributing or the FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, and you should be able to get back to the original problem.
Why we have to do it that way? Why couldn't we just equal to x there? I would have known.
Our first step is to multiply a times c. What do I get when I do that? 30, very good. So 5 times 6, a times c gives me 30. I am looking at the factors of 30, and I want the pair that adds up to negative 17. So we have to be kind of aware of this either now or when we do our parentheses. The rules kind of stay the same. What sort of signs am I going to want in my parentheses? 2 negatives. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and fill that in, you can do that. Does anybody know which pair is going to work for us, Jacob?
2 and 15.
2 and 15. If we have a negative 2 and a negative 15, that would add up to the negative 17. You do not have to make a whole list every time like we did on the first one, especially if you've got that factor sheet still. That list is already there for you. Okay? So we know we want a minus 2 and a minus 15. What should go in the front? If you put an x, I'd probably forgive you because I understand the habit there. But our variable on this one is a y, so that is what we should use. So all of this should feel pretty familiar. The next part is where it changes. We're on step 4 now. What are we going to do?
Divide by a.
Divide both of these by a. What is a?
5.
5. Which one of these is going to simplify?
15.
The 15 over 5 simplifies. So if you want to go ahead and bring your bottoms up on the first parentheses, you can do that at this time if you want to. So the 5 is going to come up in front of the y. So it's going to be 5y minus 2 and y minus 3. When we simplify, we get 3. That's it. We're done with number 2. All right, on number 3. We first had to multiply 3 and negative 35. And I heard someone say that they got negative 105. So when we took a times c, we got negative 105. Now, that number is not on our factor list. That's so sad. But who found the factors that are going to work? Emily, what'd you get? 7 and negative 15. I would agree with that. Looks wonderful. So those will multiply to negative 105, and those will add up to negative 8. So those are what we want. So in our parentheses, we would have x plus 7 and x minus 15. Now we are on our favorite step, step number 4. Who can tell me what to do? Sadia?
Divide by
divide both of these numbers in the back here by a, which is 3. Will 7 over 3 simplify? No. So what happens?
3 goes to the front.
The bottom comes up, bottoms up. So we rewrite that as 3x plus 7. Will the other one simplify?
Yes.
So what do we have?
-5.
X minus 5. And that is our answer. Again, we can do a quick check. If we take 3x times x, we get the 3x squared. If we take 7 times -5, we get 7 times -5, we get -35. So that doesn't guarantee that the whole thing's right, but it at least shows us we're definitely on the right track really quick. To do the whole thing, we would also have to do the outside, which is -15x, and the inside, which is plus 7x. So it does give us the minus 8x. So on number 4, we've got some suspicion that it might be prime. Well, let's follow our steps and see what we come up with. First step is to multiply a and c. What do we get?
10.
A times c equals 10. Now, if you want, we can kind of look ahead and think about what are our signs going to be. They both have to be positive. If you forgot some of your rules, last week and the week before we talked about if you're adding in the back, the signs have to be the same, and you use the sign from the middle term. So they have to be the same. They're both going to be positive. All right, we could also fill in those x's if we wanted to. So we are looking for factors of 10 that add up to 3. So we have 1 times 10. Is that going to add up to 3?
No.
No. We also have 2 times 5. Will that add up to 3? No. Do we have any other factors of 10? No. Can we make one of them negative? No. We already talked about the fact that they both have to be positive. So we would conclude that it is prime. So number 4 is prime. So my suggestion was to rearrange number 5 to be in the correct order, meaning ax squared plus bx plus c. What sign is going to stay with my a? That negative sign. This has to be treated like a negative 3x squared. So when we rewrite it, that negative sign stays on that 3. The plus 5x was in the middle. It stays in the middle. What sign is on that 22? It is positive, so we would put plus 22. So I would recommend first starting it off by changing this to be in the right order. Let's go ahead and keep doing this one together because I think it can get a little tricky when our a is negative. What is our next step? Multiply a times c. What do we get? Negative 66. We've never really dealt with a negative a before, so that's part of why I want to do this one together. We are looking for factors of negative 66 that add up to a positive 5. So when we look at this kind of like from the beginning, we might think that our signs should be positive, but we've always only dealt with a positive a, right? So that's not always necessarily going to be the case. We need a negative 66, so one of our numbers will be positive and one will be negative. So this changes from our traditional path. Does anybody think they know which factors will work? Charles?
6 and 11.
6 and 11. If we want the 5 to be positive, which is going to have to be positive here.
So 11's positive.
The 11's positive, making the 6
Negative.
negative. Okay. So we have to use these signs, a negative 6 and a positive 11, when we write them in our parentheses. So x minus 6, x plus 11. Then, what are we going to do?
Divide by
Divide by a -3. All right. In our first set of parentheses, can we simplify -6 over -3?
Yes.
What does it become? X plus 2. Will our other one simplify? No. So what happens?
Bottoms up.
Bottoms up. So our bottom this time is a negative. So that becomes -3x plus 11. And again, we can kind of check ourselves. If we multiply x times -3x, that would give us a -3x squared. 2 times 11 is a positive 22. Questions, concerns? All right, step 1. We want to multiply A times C, and on this one we would get -54. This one, I told you, it's a little weird because we've got another variable in the back, right? We've got another squared variable in the back. When that happens, that just means that when we split into our parentheses later, you're going to have a variable in the front and in the back. Okay, so for now we can kind of act like the y's aren't there and we'll sneak them back in later. But if you've got a squared variable in both the front and the back, then you'll have a variable in both the front term and the back term in both of your parentheses. But we'll get there in a minute. For now, we need the factors of 54, -54, that are going to add up to, Emily? -15. Did anybody find those factors?
Yeah.
Alexis, what did we get?
18 times -3.
I agree with the 18 and the 3. However, which one needs the negative?
-18.
The 18 needs the negative because we got a negative in the middle. Bigger number, sign in the middle. Bigger number, sign in the middle. All right. So we know that -18 times 3 is our pair. So when we go to our parentheses, we're going to have x minus 18. This is where I'm going to sneak that y in there. So x minus 18y and x plus 3y. Okay, if you've got a squared variable as part of your last term, then your ending term in your parentheses also has to have that variable. It's y times y is how we're going to get that y squared. But we're not done because we still need to, step 4, divide. What are we going to divide these by? A 2. The y's are just going to kind of hang out in the back for the rest of the problem. They're just going to stay there. On the first part, does 18 over 2 simplify? Yes. What does it become? -9. Again, the y's just stay in there. On the second parenthesis, does 3 over 2 simplify?
No, bottoms up.
No. So bottoms up. We have 2x plus 3y. And then we are finished. Again, we can do our quick check here. X times 2x is 2x squared. -9y times positive 3y is -27y squared. If you check your front and your back, it doesn't guarantee that the whole thing is right, but it at least is a quick way to tell you if you're close. All right, on 7 and 8, hopefully you had a chance to try those on your own. And we can see the solutions worked out to get those answers. Again, our steps are multiply A times C. Find the factors of A and C that would add up to B in the middle, our term in the middle. After you do that, write out those factors in parentheses with your variable. Divide in the back by A. Simplify and bottoms up if needed.